Faith Forged in Fire, where we dive headfirst into the unique challenges and triumphs that comes with being a firefighter, all while exploring what it means to live out a biblical worldview. Join us as we find hope, perseverance, and faith in the midst of the heat and chaos. Welcome to the podcast.
Welcome to the Faith Forged in Fire podcast, where we we embrace the fires that forge our character. What's so funny there, gentlemen?
Nothing. You got it.
Hey, all right. I got my lucky card here.
Yeah, there you go.
It is his podcast.
It's Tanner's podcast.
Tanner's podcast.
Oh, man.
Steve, I was waiting for you to kind of say it in the creepy voice that you did the last time.
You
introduced the podcast.
You made me fun.
Welcome.
Yeah, you made fun of me for like 2 weeks on that. Never again. I'll come up with a different voice every time is what I'll do.
That's all right.
In true firefighter fashion, we never actually say, hey, man, you probably shouldn't do that. We just pick on them until they quit.
Yeah. Until they quit, yeah. So,
and he's still here.
So for you viewers who are watching, I know we have a special guest today, something a little bit different that we don't do all the time, but
although we have lately.
Well, yeah, it's true. We did. You had that lately one with the LSPR and had two guests, actually. One here in the shop and one on online. But no, we're very fortunate today to have Tanner Smith with us. Pastor and also the chaplain of Layton Township Fire Department here in Michigan. Can we say that? Is it okay to talk about you being a chaplain?
You already
I know. I just thought about it. I should have asked you before.
Too late now.
Yeah, I know.
Too late now. Yes.
Take two. But no, Tanner is. We are very fortunate to have him on today to kind of talk to us about peer support groups in the firehouse and at your fire department, and kind of really cool how me and Tanner met is as everybody knows, or we've mentioned before, I sell fire equipment here in the state of Michigan, and Layton Township is in my territory. And as I first came onto the show, as becoming a regular member of the show, I just happened to, through the chief of Layton Township, had an opportunity to meet Tanner, and we sat down and chatted for a while and shared our faith together. And I said, hey, I would love to have you in the show sometime. And, so here we are. So we're so blessed to have him here and, to talk to us. So Tanner, I thank you for joining us today. And,
thanks for having me.
Yeah. So like you and I talked about a few things when we met, but one of the things we thought it'd be really important to talk about today is just peer support groups and how important those are in the firehouse when there's issues going on, and whether it's a rough call or something is happening in someone's life personally, how those support groups can help each other out. So can you kind of talk about a little bit what you do at the fire department and how beneficial it is for the guys and gals there at the department?
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, and thanks for doing this ministry for people. I think it's pretty awesome. So typically when there's something happening with somebody, I mean, at least in my own life, I look for people in my community, in my life, who are trustworthy. And a lot of times the most trustworthy people are the people who have also been through whatever I'm going through and have come out, or some version of it, come out on the other side. I call it like the wisdom of the shipwrecked, like the only real wisdom is the wisdom of people who've been through it. Mm-hmm. And so the idea there is, as a chaplain, I can offer a lot of stuff. I have training in different things. I like, some insight around trauma and around how people's brains work and how people's bodies respond to things. But what really needs to happen is there has to be a trustworthy group of people who everybody else can see, man, these people have been through the same thing. They get it. They've done the same things I've done. And then there's multiple points of connection. And you kind of, with a peer support group, what happens is I lead a peer support team. There are 4 other firefighters on the team, the chief and 3 others. Those 3 others were selected by our fighter community, by our fire team, through an anonymous ballot. Because, and the question I asked was, if you had a really significant, important, difficult life experience, who in this group of people would you go to? And it was as simple as that. They wrote down a couple of names. I took all the I took all of them and I figured out, who is it that everybody sort of says, these are my people. And it was pretty clear actually who was already leading in this way. And so I approached them and I put together a training manual. We just began meeting every single month. We did a little training on the front end, meet every single month to just kind of do the hygiene. Who do you know who needs care? Who seems to be having a hard time? Who haven't you seen in a while? Who's having problems with their job? And that's actually branched out into other things. Like now we have a little food pantry in the firehouse for anybody who needs, they need a can of corn or they need something to eat. There'll be deer meat or something in the freezer. Just anybody who needs something, it's there. Holidays, we'll kind of take care of each other, make sure everybody has what they need. And so it's just kind of a network of support that goes beyond just the chaplain.
Wow.
How did you, I guess, get into that? How did you bring that to the firehouse? That's a question that I have as far as, that being new in the firehouse for you. What broke down the walls or whatever to let that come in?
Yeah. I mean, I saw it in the church too. I had the great privilege of pastoring 2 different churches over the past 17 years or so. And in both those churches, it was clear to me right away that there were more needs than I could possibly address. And people were going to one another. So I had to figure out a way to multiply myself. And really not even just multiply some of the knowledge I have, but not just multiply me, but multiply the willingness and the ability and the confidence in other people to care for one another. It has to be a whole network of care, not just one person who's responsible for caring for the community. So training people in the churches that I worked in and setting up teams and things like that, that was a natural part of that work. And it just, extended to the firehouse. And then I searched out a couple of best practices. I found some other firehouses that were doing this kind of thing and figured out how do you set them up? How do you go about, what's the meeting rhythm, things like that.
Sure.
We have a little manual, standard operating procedures manual, which covers things like confidentiality. Like when do you hold confidentiality and when do you break it? Because most of the time you hold confidentiality, but there's moments where maybe they're endangering themselves or somebody else, and you've got to know when to say something. Some stuff about trauma and how trauma gets kind of stuck in our bodies and what to look for, substance abuse, suicidal ideation, those sorts of things, things to look for. We had this manual, we go through that, but really the main thing now is just meeting on a regular basis so that we can start to actually, just pay attention to what's happening all around us.
Yeah. So for the viewers that are watching that, maybe you have a fire chief that's thinking about something like this. What were the steps you took though in starting this? So just to help out somebody that maybe is wondering, hey, that's a great idea, but I don't even know where to begin starting a peer support, maybe help them out a little bit of kind of the process that you went through to kind of start that.
Yeah. So the first thing I think is to do a gut check and figure out if you're really serious about doing this. Because my chief had said to me, the worst thing we can do is start something that we don't intend to continue. And I couldn't agree with that more. It's worse if you start it and then it just drops off because people feel like even less of a priority. So that said, you got to find somebody who's gonna drive the thing, who's passionate about it. If you've got a chaplain, that's a great person to do it. And then make sure you get buy-in from, all the upper echelons of the team. Make sure that the captains and lieutenants and everybody thinks this is a good idea and understands the purpose of the group. Go over confidentiality, understanding that this team is not a team of trained therapists or counselors. That's not the purpose. They are a listening ear. They are people who have access to resources and know where to send people if they need to. But that's the first thing. Get buy-in that you're actually going to do this thing, and then appoint a point person. And then the second thing to do is to explain it to the entire fire team in your meeting, whatever your meeting structure is. Say, this is what we're setting up. Take questions. Total transparency. Help them understand that we're doing this because what you don't want to do is have people think, oh man, they're spying on us, like they're gonna like they're just big brothers watching over us. That is the opposite of what this is. This is supposed to be about brotherhood, but not that kind of brother. It's about taking care of each other. So explaining that, taking questions, and then handing out the slip where they can just answer that one question. If you had a big hard thing happen in your life, write down the names of up to 3 people that you would go to in the fire department that you would go to talk about it. And then you take those names and you say, all right, here are the people that everybody is saying, these are the people. And it was clear for us. I don't know if it would be that way everywhere, but my experience is that certain people have, in my opinion, it's a spiritual gift. God has given the gift of pastoring, of shepherding, of care to certain people. Just like he's given the gift of leadership to certain people, the gift of teaching to certain people. I think the gift of shepherding and taking care of people and paying attention to their needs is a gift. So those needs are going to come out, whether you make it an official group or not, that's going to come out. You get those names, you go and you talk to them, you say, here's what we're doing. You've been nominated by your friends, by your comrades, and then you start meeting. Now we have a standard operating procedure manual. I'm happy to give that to anybody who wants to see what one looks like. It's got a ton of resources in it. So if something happens, they've got one book they can go to find phone numbers of things and processes for things and what to do when you run into, substance abuse and suicidal ideation. And, it's got all that stuff in it. I had a meeting with the team and I said, we're going to just look at a few pages. I want you to know this stuff's in there, kind of showed them where some of those resources were. And then we just began meeting and starting to talk about who it was what we were noticing, what questions we had, who needed follow up, things like that.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Tanner, what was the initial reaction from the fire team there? And what is that engagement like now that you've been really implementing this?
Yeah. So we implemented it, kind of in the middle of COVID.
Sure.
So one of the things about that particular time is that a lot of stuff, there weren't a lot of ways to connect. I mean, first responders were some of the only people who were out and about with people.
Right.
So I think it was pretty welcome. I didn't experience a lot of people who were like suspicious or anything. But I think that the primary thing was just creating transparency about what this was and what it wasn't. And now we meet every month for breakfast, and we mostly just kind of laugh and tease each other and have a good time, the 5 of us. And then, it was in the last half an hour, 20 minutes of our breakfast, just talking about, who needs help, what we're noticing. And then we just make assignments like, hey, you're connected with that guy. Why don't you give him a phone call? Yeah. All right. I'll do that and I'll report back. That's as far as it needs to go. And then if they need a next step, they can always come to me because I'm there as a resource. This is my job. So I'm there to help them, if they get over their heads on something. But it's mostly like, it's like hygiene. Like if you, you keep brushing your teeth, you're probably not going to get cavities. Right. Stuff comes up, right? But it's just kind of like, let's just make sure we're just continuing to check in and make sure everybody knows. The other cool thing we did, which I think is fantastic, that our township was willing to do this, but we got something called an EAP, Employee Assistance Program, for everybody. It's really, really affordable. It's like $5 a person for, I think, is it for the month or for the year? I think it's for the year. It's hardly anything. But basically what happens is anybody who wants to talk to a counselor can get 5 free sessions with a counselor. Anybody in their whole family, anybody living in their house can get 5 free sessions per year. It's super cheap and it's anonymous. So if anybody thinks, man, I got marriage troubles, great. Here's a resource right there for you, and it's free. So that came out of our conversation in our team as well, our support team.
That's
so
very
things
cool.
like that.
That's cool.
You just come up with ideas and say, all right, well, let's just do this. Let's operationalize it.
I'm pretty familiar with the EAP process, and what's really cool about it for those who don't know is that those counselors that as an employee you can go to, they can also get you to other professionals if it's something that they don't directly deal with. So if it's something like substance abuse, they can get you to somebody who specializes in substance abuse. So yeah, that's very cool that you guys were able to do that. I had a question, but I can't remember it.
No, it's okay. What I was going to ask is, Tanner, what do you feel the reception is from the guys? Are they super receptive? Do you find people that are opening up and actually, because as we know, and we've talked about this on the show and for the viewers out there that don't understand is, the fire service has always been, there's always been a thought process in the fire service, especially many, many years ago, where it's like, oh, we don't talk about stuff. Be a man, suck it up, and be tough. Be a man. You're kind of weak. If you're showing weakness in something like this, to go talk to somebody that you're struggling with something. So, do you find that in the firehouse that you're still dealing with that, or do you actually find guys that are really willing to have a conversation with you and open up about what's going on?
Yeah. I haven't run into too much of the kind of I'm too tough for that kind of thing. And I think, I'm blessed. I am blessed. And just maybe we're just really blessed and fortunate to not have that. I think one thing that came up when you're talking about what's the reception, I think it's really important that, people don't feel like they're having something done to them. Like that they're getting peer supported. You know what I mean? Like, the peer support team's here. like that doesn't feel good. Anybody like, oh man, they called in the help, cause I gotta, like, nobody wants that. So you gotta find ways that it's just like, what we're doing is we're just being intentional about taking care of each other. That's it. Like, there's no program other than I actually care about you as a human being. I care about your wife. I care about your husband. I care about your kids. I care about your siblings. I care about you. And so I'm not doing a thing. And so it's important to just, the posture is really important.
That's very cool. So after you guys meet, you said the five of you meet, and then when you see something, you kind of approach it. What is that process like? After you guys meet, and you see a brother or sister that needs support in one area, how do you approach that? And can you explain it so that if anybody else is interested, they kind of know as well, even if they don't have a program like this, how is a good way to approach somebody that you feel is struggling in one area or another?
Yeah. So I think one of the best things that you can say to somebody is some version of, I miss you, or I see you. I think all of us, we want to know that the people that we care about and who care about us miss us when we're not around. And we want to know that when we're struggling, they can see it and they're paying attention. So I think those two phrases, some version of that, is really helpful. Say that somebody hasn't been around the firehouse for a while. They haven't been making calls, or when they are around, they're just kind of distant. You can just say, hey, man, I miss you. How you doing? I haven't seen you in a while, or we haven't been able to connect. Can we go grab lunch or something sometime? I just want to see how it's going. Or some version of like, man, I know that you've been really struggling. Like I heard maybe that you were thinking about quitting your job, or you did quit your job, or you lost your job. Or, man, I heard people will give you, people will tell you some things, and that's how you're going to find out some stuff, is people might mention something. It's just having the ears on to listen for when they might be telling you that they're hurting and saying, I see you, I see that hurts. Can you tell me more about that? That's a great question. Tell me more about that. Another great question is, what's that like for you? So many times we think somebody tells us a life problem and we think we got to fix it. And man, people don't want to be fixed. Mm-hmm. They just want to be seen and heard and cared for. So if you can say, what's that like for you? And then, you can say like, we have resources. Is there any way that I can help, or that we can help? It's the kind of like, I'll go with you. Maybe that's the third thing, is like, I miss you, I see you, and I'll go with you. Yeah. Whatever that means, like I'll keep walking with you through this thing. So for us, somebody calls, somebody say they lost their job. We know about this. Whoever of us is the closest to that person and most natural, will say, hey, I'm going to reach out before Wednesday. Great. They reach out, they have whatever conversation, and then they'll circle back sometimes with us and say, I had the conversation, everything's cool. Or I had the conversation and I think here are a couple next steps we could take. it's really for the most part informal. A little bit different when we have a really bad call, something terrible happens. You know, and we do offer critical incident stress debriefings for anybody who wants to come. But man, a lot of times those don't cut it for people. Sometimes they can be re-traumatizing for some people and actually not helpful.
Right.
Oh, interesting.
Go figure.
Yeah. I think you're talking to three of them here.
Yeah.
I think three out of four of us have been through it.
I've literally never been to a good one. It's always been. In fact, I've walked away
They're
going,
tough, man.
I was fine until I went to that.
That's how I was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yep.
Yeah, and there's actually a growing body of research that says it's like moving from CISD, critical incident stress debriefings, to CISM, so critical incident stress management. How do we manage the stress long term rather than just bringing it all up and re-traumatizing everybody?
Right.
How do we say, gosh, you know what? Sarah was on that call and she was the first one there, and she's I don't know. Hey, chaplain, can you send her a text and just check in? Yep. Like that's a much it's time intensive, but it's a little bit better in terms of not re-traumatizing people. So that's it's a little bit more formal when we're going through something that's been really nasty and hard. You know, not that losing your job isn't nasty and hard, but you know what I'm saying when you face something.
That tends to be less traumatizing though. So, but no, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
There's, you know, a lot to be said about, you know, some of these, debriefs, if you want to call it that, where you're just kind of sitting and, you know, spinning your tires in the mud and not really going anywhere. And really all it's doing is it's extending that period of, you know, the open wound, if you will, rather than, like you said, managing it and actually being able to take those steps forward. And I think it's really cool the way that you're approaching this, with kind of just opening that door, right? Just opening that door and saying, hey, I see you, you're welcome in, let's walk together through this. And in a lot of ways, it's just like, you know, a church who keeps each other accountable, and, you know, they really walk hand in hand and side by side each other. And that's just very cool.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Increasingly people aren't going to church. I mean, that's a trend, right? Like increasingly people are not finding local Christian bodies to be trustworthy. I mean, let's just be frank. Like people are leaving for a reason. It's not their fault.
Right.
In my opinion, it's not their fault, right? Something about what we're offering is not speaking to the felt need of people.
Yeah,
we can argue over what that is all day long, but the reality is what we have to do is we have to show up in places as the church.
Exactly.
Not tell people to come to church, but we go wherever we are, and we can offer people in those spaces that kind of care.
No, and you're absolutely right. It's being the church. It's, you know, we are the church. The building's not the church. Right. You know, it's not a location or a destination. And you're absolutely right. I mean, we have to bring the church to people, and it sounds like that's exactly what you're doing in your program. Sorry, go ahead, Steve.
No. Oh, better. Oh, there I am.
No, it was better before.
Smokey's earning his keep. He's finally chewing through that wire.
No, what I was funny when you were saying that is that I was thinking to myself that, you know, it's just like what you said earlier on about being relatable to people, and those people are willing to talk to you when you're able to be relatable to them. And it goes the same thing with the church. If we're too much, you know, everything's perfect, everything's wonderful, we can't relate to people, then that's probably another reason why it turns people away.
Right. Well, if it's that like institutionalized as well, right? Like we have these processes and we have these you know, the ways of how we do things. It seems disingenuous to people.
Yes.
And that's
tradition.
In something, yeah, exactly. And in something like this program that Tanner's running, it's coming from a genuine place. It's coming from a place of truly, genuinely caring about people, and that's exactly what we needed. That is a type of revival that we need in the church.
Absolutely. You know, Tanner, another thing I was going to ask you is being a pastor, it puts you in a little bit of a position as well, because not everybody, I mean, what level are you able to throw in faith with peer support as well? Because obviously not everybody there is a Bible believing Christian person. So how do you balance that with the original help, but I've been able to at times throw God into the mix and relate them both together. How are you able to balance that? I mean, obviously people know you're a pastor, right? So they probably expect a little bit, but there's still that level where they don't want you stepping on their toes and pushing faith on them at the same time, absolutely. I would assume.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a couple of questions you can ask. I mean, people will let you know, first of all. People will signal. And if you are paying attention, they'll let you know, like, yeah, I'm a person of faith or I'm not. But one question that I have asked before, on scenes with people who've, victims, even, or the families of victims who show up at scenes. I'll just introduce myself as the chaplain for the fire department, and then I'll say something like, we'll talk to them for a little while and figure it out and what's happening and kind of help them understand how, what's happening over there, what's next. But then sometimes I'll say, are you a person who prays? That's a really low, it's an easy way to ask, like, is prayer something that would be good for you? And it's like non-threatening. I've had people say, no, that's not really part of my story. I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to stand right here. If you need anything, you let me know. And maybe I'll say, like, that's totally fine. I'm going to be praying because it helps me. But, so there's like non-threatening ways, but almost every time people will say, yeah, I would love it if we could pray.
I've asked that question countless times, and I think one time I had somebody say, no, that's not really for me, because most people are just, they're so desperate they'll take any help they can get in that moment.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, one time I had a guy who was like holding a cigarette, and I was like, are you going to smoke that? He's like, can I? I'm like, I think you probably should. Now's a good time for you to go ahead and smoke that. Right?
Now's as good of time as any.
If ever there was a time, it's right now, man. Like, that's what those were made for, is this moment.
That's
so
funny.
Can I ask you, did you use the phrase "smoke them if you got them"?
Smoke it always, right? But then immediately after, I'm like, hey man, for me, like, it's prayer. Are you a person who prays? And he's like, I would love it if we could pray. And I'm like, well, then let's pray before you light that up, because I don't want to breathe it in. So, but there are ways to sort of connect with people. You don't have to make it weird. And like, it's not about conversion either. I mean, right. my conviction is God already loves everybody. Like, we've all already got as much of God's love as we're ever going to get. You can't do anything to get God to love you more. Our job is just to get people to understand that God loves them and let the love change them. So I'm just always looking for opportunities to show them that love and prove that love by the way that I show up. I'm not trying to get them to join my club or anything like that, So if you show up with that heart, I think you're in good shape.
So I got a question, kind of taking things. We're just about out of time here, and I've really appreciated this conversation. But I just would like to. One of the things we haven't talked a lot about on this show is chaplaincy, even though I am one. But I'm just curious, Tanner, about what does it look like for you on the fire? What is your involvement? What calls do you show up for? How do you make sure that you're building those relationships and building some respect with your fire team? Kind of what level does the day-to-day look like for you? Really for our listeners to hear how it works for you.
Yeah. So, because, ours is almost entirely volunteer fire department. So we don't have people that are sleeping there overnight or taking shifts or anything. I mean, they take shifts, but they're from their homes, and our fire chief is full time. But what I try to do to just stay connected is I show up to I try to show up to at least the first part of our bi-monthly trainings, the 2 trainings a month, and just to be there. And sometimes I'll bring some treats or something, but just to be a face. And I get to know the people. I ask them questions about their lives. I joke around. Levity goes a long way. If you don't take yourself too seriously, that helps a lot. But just trying to be present. And then in terms of calls, I have a radio, and when it goes off, I listen, and I try to figure out what's happening. I only go if it's priority 1, and if it sounds like something that's going to be traumatic. Where they're going to need some support. So, PIs, car accidents, things like that, fires. I don't make it a practice. We have mutual aid, with other departments in the area. I don't make it a practice to go to mutual aid calls. Just, I don't know. I just feel like that's not my, I would go if one of those groups said, "Hey man, anytime we have mutual aid, can you please come?" I would be happy to do that, but I don't want to step on any toes. So I don't show up to those, but anything that's in our area, that's priority one, where I'm like, yeah, this is pretty serious. If there's CPR in progress, I always go. If somebody's trapped in a car or something, I always go. And I just kind of make a call. And then I also have out to the, to the officers, you got my phone number. If I'm not showing up and you need me to, call me or text me and I will, if I can come, I will come.
Right.
So sometimes they just make the call and say, "Are you on your way?" And usually I am.
Right.
But sometimes I haven't been, and it's been good that they told me to come.
Sure.
Yeah.
Good. Well, go ahead.
One interesting thing I want to ask you is like, how did you guys, I mean, maybe this is after the call, we can ask this, but how did you guys decide to create this space for people? Online space for chaplains?
We didn't.
Okay.
It just kind of started, honestly. So,
especially to the point where we're at now.
Right. So several years ago. No, this is a good question because we have a lot of listeners who maybe don't even understand how this started.
It was an accident on Facebook?
Well, several years ago, Jason Sawtell and I started the podcast a few years back, and then things happened in both of our lives, and we kind of let it stop. We actually started it as not even a firefighting podcast. It was called the Hey Pastor podcast, and Jason would just throw questions at me, and then we really felt a burden to turn it towards firefighters, and so we did. And then things happening in his life and my life, we just let it go. And then Rich and I decided one day we were just kind of talking and decided, hey, let's start it back up again. And so Rich and I started it back up, and then we had Steve on, and we're like, well, Steve, you want to join us? And then we had Jake on, and we same thing. We said, hey, you want to join us? So it really when Rich and I started it back up, we hit a spot where I think we were, at least for me, I kind of felt like, all right, maybe we started it up for nothing. Yeah. It just didn't seem like we were getting a lot of traction. The two of us felt, I mean, it was kind of wearying in a sense. But since we've brought the focus and we are where we are now, we're seeing a lot of good ministry from it. And that's encouraging and keeping us going. Now we feel like we have much more direction and purpose. And so, it's just kind of one of those, the Lord took us one step at a time. We never planned to be here. It just following each step of obedience, really.
You might want to let them know who Jason is, by the way. Knowing everybody would know who Jason is. But Jason Sawtell is.
Well, shame on him.
I know.
That's their fault.
Yeah, he's an former retired Oakland firefighter that came to Christ at Oakland Fire and wrote a book. And isn't he involved with a movie and kind of some things going on?
Well, he was, yeah, but yeah.
It didn't, okay. But he wrote a book and he's on fire for the Christ and does a lot in the firefighter circuit.
So, by the way, I'll throw that out there. If you have not read yet The Rescuer, I would highly encourage you to read The Rescuer. Grab that book and read it. And I give that out to a lot of people, a lot of firefighters. It's a great book. Cool. So yeah.
We'll have to get you a copy, Tanner. We'll have to get you a copy of The Rescuer. So
I'd love it. I'd love it. Thank you.
But, well, Tanner, we can't thank you enough for coming on, man. I was just thinking about it really quick, just in all fairness, because I know you told me about it. But if you want to do a quick shout out about your nonprofit you're a part of as well. I mean, you were nice enough to come on the show. So in that quick shout out for what you do, as well as being a pastor and a chaplain. Just quickly, go ahead.
Yeah. I work for a Christian nonprofit that, helps people navigate conflict. So yeah, that's my job, but I'm really grateful to be, just able to pastor alongside you guys and take care of people where they are, so I really appreciate the work you guys are doing. I'm really pleased to be a part of it. Thank you for the invitation.
Well, it's great having you on. And I want a couple of things we got to cover here before we land this plane, but, Tanner mentioned that he's got a book that they've put together, and he's more than willing for you to have that book. So if you're listening and you want that, just email us at
ffifpodcast@gmail.com. We need some more. Hey,
can't take that away from Steve.
I know you can't. That's my
He
puppy.
worked so hard to set that up.
Oh, Tanner, if you had any idea, I am so illiterate. And I called Jake up with Jake here. He knows what he's doing. And I said, Jake, we got to get this email set up. And he goes, yep, already done. So it's been a running joke about me and emails.
Oh,
but no, we have the email, and we'd love for the viewers.
You can't open a bag of coffee. Why did you think you could set up an email?
I know.
So Jake here.
Whose idea was it to give him that task?
So Jake here runs a nonprofit as well, and he actually is the founder of Red Flannel Coffee Company. And so my wife, that's all she drinks now is Red Flannel coffee. And the first bag I got, I couldn't figure out how to open the stupid bag, and so I ripped it open like a gorilla. I just ripped that thing open, and my wife goes, "Did you see the pull tab?" And I'm like, "No, what pull tab?" And she showed me it. So now every time
The one that's on the front of the bag.
yeah. So now every time we get coffee, I get like notes and see, this is how you open the coffee. So that's another running joke here too. So, but no, yeah. So, but no, we just want to. We can't thank you enough for coming on, man. And we love to work with you on other projects, whatever. I know that you're just really involved with the Lord, and we just really we feel so strong about this ministry, and God's really taken it somewhere. And we just love to partner up with people and work together in any way possible to get the gospel out to people and get people to Jesus and help them be used by God to help them in any way possible. So we can't thank you enough for coming on. And
thank you guys.
Hey,
Thanks.
Our sponsors got to talk.
Thank you, Tanner.
Well, yeah, before we do that, though, let's make sure people know, if they're first-time listeners, you can find us on Facebook for regular encouraging content on Facebook and Instagram. So make sure you follow us there. If you're a first-time viewer on YouTube, also make sure you subscribe. You can hear this anywhere you normally listen to podcasts. So pretty much you can find us anywhere. And, of course, as we already tried to do, we can't thank our sponsor enough. So at this time, Jake, what do you have for us?
Yeah, hey, head over to redflannelcoffeeco.com. And if you are new to the website, if you're new to the podcast, use PJ30 at checkout to get 30% off. But you know what? If you are a returning customer, we want to reward you as well. So use promo code FIRE30. Same thing. 30% off any of our coffees. And by the time this comes out, there very well may be new roasts out there. So we've got a lot of things working, including some brand new mugs that you'll find out.
Are those spill proof? Are those mugs spill proof like the white ones were? They were.
They leak from the top.
Okay.
So as they should. Mugs, hats, apparel. There's a lot of things coming down the way. And as always, when you support us, you're supporting this podcast, not monetarily, but you keep us running and keep this ministry alive. And we greatly appreciate it. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and be on the lookout for at some point soon some added Faith Forged and Fire merch.
Some point. I don't know how soon, but
at some point we want to keep,
Dangling
we're going
out
to
there.
keep that idea alive. No, we will. We are looking at that as well. We've got a lot of irons in the fire right now.
Yeah,
so
it just takes time. Right?
Fire30 at checkout, redflannelcoffeeco.com.
Of course, if somebody else wanted to throw a little, a little sponsorship in the pot too, to give us a little money to get some of that started, right? That might speed us along a little bit.
Hey, it depends on how much they give you.
Right. So we can have more than one sponsor sometimes.
As it comes in, other might dwindle. So
right.
Well, I think it's about time to land the plane. What do you guys say? It's I see the runway. I don't know about you guys. We're coming into the descent.
For the crash landing.
I think Tanner's about to jump.
I think he is.
I think he was putting a parachute on just a minute ago.
Yeah, I think he's got.
I was checking out redflannelcoffee.com. I'm looking at these cool mugs.
Wow.
I'm telling you.
Lifestyle shop and shopping coffee. I mean,
and it's
new
growing
flavors,
and growing.
but same pull tab. Am I right?
Same pull tab. Oh man! That's it. Get this man a chair.
You're hired, Ted. We're gonna have to start putting on all of those Steve proof.
We need a bigger desk.
No, we don't. Hey, Steve.
Hey, Steve.
We need this chair, bud.
Yeah, all right. I'm gonna be the producer from now on. I'm gonna sit over here.
You and your Notre Dame cup.
I know. Well, I got so many checks against me. Well, hey, again, it has been wonderful, Tanner. We can't thank you enough. This is a fun episode,
Thank you, Tanner.
and hey, thank you so much for everybody, and we'll talk to you next time.
All right, we'll talk to you later.